We're within reach of the Western Front.
Our faces change imperceptibly.
You can read it on all our brows.
My name is Charlie Mcvicker. I'm 25 years old and I'm from South East London, and I'm an actor and acting teacher, and I'm part of Incognito Theatre Company, which was founded in 2014 with me and some friends from school. And we started the company as a platform for ourselves to create our own work, and we took our first show to the Edinburgh Fringe. We did Government Inspector by Nikolai Gogol, and took it to the Fringe in 2014, and yeah, since then we've been adapting work, writing original work, and just giving ourselves a platform to create entertaining work.
Hello, my name's George John. I'm a 25-year-old actor that helped set up Incognito Theatre Company, which is a company that was set up in 2014. It came as a result of being part of Young Pleasance, which is a youth theatre company that normally takes 14 to 21-year-olds up to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. They're also in association with the Pleasance Theatre in Islington, which also puts on work all year round. So the story there is Incognito. Basically, the five of us, the five founding members, were part of Young Pleasance from around about sort of 15 years old onwards for 3 years, or 3 or 4 years. So we got our first experience and taste of Edinburgh through this company, and really enjoyed the experience, and the skills that we learned from Young Pleasance put us in really good stead in terms of creating our own work, and that's something that we've always been really excited about, getting that opportunity to bring things onto the London stage or the Edinburgh stage.
We had a sort of taste for the fact that we really liked the Edinburgh Fringe and sort of like the energy of it, and how there's so much going on, and it's a kind of just like the theatrical and comedic energy around all those fringe spaces. So we were like, oh, we want more of this, and we want to be a part of it. So the five of us, we were in a theatre studies A-level class at school. And so we decided to, create our own company, and we were like, fringe theatre is kind of like, that's a great platform for young artists. So we formed this theatre called Incognito, named after lines in Nikolai Gogol's Government Inspector, where they're like, a government inspector, incognito. So we were like, that's good, that's us. All Quiet on the Western Front is an epic World War I novel by Erich Remarque, who's a German writer, and he wrote it in the 1930s based on some of his own experiences of World War I, and it's about 5 school friends who are basically enlisted to go and fight for Germany in the war, because they're encouraged by their teachers and by sort of town criers who come to the town and encourage them to basically sign up, and it's your country needs you kind of energy. And it was obviously the first kind of huge European war on that scale. And so for them, it was this kind of thing of, they were like sort of hungry for it. That's how the characters come across in the novel. Like, they're hungry for the glory and the victory of helping Germany kind of, dominate Europe. And so that's kind of part of the tragedy of it, because they were sold this sort of dream about how they could help their country become this kind of glorifying nation. And then the novel is basically in the story, and what we focused on in our telling of the story is basically the breakdown of that, and how those ideals are kind of just disappear into emptiness because they don't exist.
It's from very much the German perspective, so that it's interesting and unique in that sense that you always, the stories that we generally get about the war are from the British or the Allied perspective. So, this is an account of the German perspective, and so, it's a completely fresh take, but I think what's most interesting about it is that it's, a completely universal story. The stories that the young men that we see in this play are, that we are telling are very similar to the British perspective, because, at the end of the day, that's, they're just people, and we were just people. It was just one side, two sides of a coin.
It was the centenary of the Battle of the Somme, which was obviously one of the most major events of World War I. And there was so much, in public consciousness, there was so much going on around remembrance. Especially, the National Theatre did We're Here Because We're Here, which were kind of sort of like flash mobs in the train stations of men in soldiers' uniforms singing. And we found that it was kind of an energy in public consciousness it was quite moving, and it was quite energizing towards remembrance and to remember those men who fought. And we were like, this is kind of the perfect time to keep telling these stories and keep those stories alive.
The play follows the account of 5 young schoolboys that go to war. They're enlisted. They're sort of, I wouldn't say shoehorned, but they're encouraged by people in responsibility, so they're teachers or recruiting officers to go on this great adventure, which they promised that the First World War would be. They invoke all this patriotism. They say that it's going to be a wonderful adventure and an experience that you wouldn't possibly want to miss. And these young impressionable boys, they take this on and they enlist and they go off to war, and they find that it's not what they were promised, or not what they were, the dream they were sold. It's filthy, it's brutal, and they see things that people of that age just shouldn't really be seeing. It follows Paul Baumer, who is the narrator, he's narrator in the book, and he's also the narrator in our show. And it follows him, but also his school friends, unravelling as they deal with the brutality of what they are facing every day.
So I play Paul Baumer, who's one of the young men who gets forced into the war. And what I think is important about his story is that a lot of the time in war plays, it's about the war itself, and it's about the historical landmarks and events during World War I. Whereas I think what this play is about is it centralises Paul's emotional narrative, and it's about the emotional events rather than the historical ones. So, it's his friends dying. It's the first time he goes home to see his mother after the start of the war. And then it's his return to the war and seeing his friends with, their legs blown off and their arms blown off. And it charts that emotional pain until the point where he's like an empty shell and can't go on, and kind of his identity doesn't exist outside the war. So that's what I think is important about this particular war story.
It's these stunning visual pictures that we create. We use the 5 crates that we have as our props. We create tableaus. We create sequences and set pieces, all done with the body. There are different skills that we use, different images that we have helped to evoke this, different ideas of how we want the movement to be. And the movement, it very much changes from quite brutal, quite sudden movements, and then it has these kind of dream sequences as well that are a bit more fluid and a bit more elegiac in a sense. What is really nice about the piece, I think, is that you have a sense of brutality and beauty at the same time, sort of put hand in hand together, so together in a way. The movement itself is a mixture of the two, I would say, and is interspersed quite nicely together and stitched together quite nicely.
I think because we're close in age to the boys who would have had to go off and do this, I think we have an emotional connection with them that we maybe otherwise wouldn't have, because, the thought for me of leaving my mum at home and having to go to a distant land is kind of terrifying. And I think forcing ourselves into those emotional spaces whilst we're surrounded by our real actual school friends, I think gives us an extra insight into their story.
The biggest challenges for the company, administrative aside, was how we were going to stage the battles or the different scenes that we were going to create. The piece itself is episodic, so it goes from different scenes. It jumps from different scenes quite quickly. So we use a minimalist set. So we use 5 crates, very little props, almost no props, and it's very much a case of asking the audience to come with us and use their imaginations.
So we've decided to bring the play back for Vault Festival 2020, partly because when we first did it in Edinburgh, we were all still at uni and we were all still at drama school, and we really wanted to take it further, do it here in London and potentially tour it. And this is the first time that we're all graduated and we're all back together. So that's one reason. But also there's still big events coming up around remembrance for World War One, like VE Day is coming up in May. And so we think that public consciousness is still kind of wrapped around remembrance at the moment in the same way that it was in 2016.
When we first premiered it in Edinburgh, we got some excellent reviews. We sold out the run for the whole month. From that run, we also were invited to New York, so we went to New York in 2016 as well, in the summer of 2016 after we did the show, and that again it went down like really, really well, and it was such a great experience to take it over to America and to get a whole different sense, a whole different idea of the culture of going to the theatre there, and that was excellent. And because it was so successful in 2016, it then went back to Edinburgh for a 2-week run in a much bigger venue in 2017. And again, got excellent reviews. It sold very, very well. And I think it's very exciting for it to come to London for the first time and perform in London. Wherever we've gotten a really, really strong response from audience members that I think really connect with what we're trying to say and the characters that we are portraying and the story that we are portraying as well.
He's right. Even though we don't want to admit it, we're no longer young men. We've lost any desire to conquer the world. We're refugees, really. But fleeing from ourselves, from our own lives. We were 18 years old. And just learning to love the world and being in it, and then we had to shoot it to bits. That first shelter land went straight for our hearts. We've been cut off from real action, from progress, from that scary thought of getting on with your life. We don't believe in those things anymore. We fear the war and nothing else.